Hey everyone, it's Friday and we are back with another episode of the 6-5 podcast. I'm flying this plane today alongside my co-host, Mr. Patrick Moorhead. Moorhead. You know, I almost forgot your name right now. Actually, that's a good start. With my always esteemed, always super smart and wisdom-filled analyst in residence, Patrick Moorhead. How are you, buddy?
Dan, I'm doing great. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. I mean, on the road all last week, on the road 2 days. Did not expect to be on the road this week, but was on the road, back on the saddle. And Dan, I really don't care if you forget my name. Just don't forget my wire transfer number. That's
Oh
all
my
I really
God.
care about.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Are you still sending those emails that are like, hey, dear customer, here's my idea and here's my wire number?
I mean, I do put the wire information on every even proposal. So yeah, I mean, why not? I mean,
Well,
what I strive to get to is where I just put the wire number, and then if they want me to do work, then I'll do that. So I don't
oh
know.
boy. Oh boy. This could become a commercial for somebody. It might be for you or it might be for your competition, but this could be used. Oh goodness gracious. But yeah, it was a big week this week. We moved quickly. You know, we went Austin to San Diego to Seattle and back. It was sort of like stealthy super secret events until they were no longer super secret anymore, and then they weren't secret at all. But yeah, we were a very, very limited cohort of people that went up to Seattle. We'll talk about that. Redmond, actually, to be part of a pretty big announcement that kind of stole all the headlines this week,
Pretty much.
but pretty much stole all the headlines, drove some real competitive movements. We'll talk about those as well. If you haven't tuned into the 6-5 before, and this is your first time, I'm going to ask you where the heck you've been and why you haven't been here. And once we get over that, I'm going to tell you, well, this 6-5 is 6 topics, approximately 5 minutes each. And let's be honest, they're never 5 minutes each.
No.
But over the next 45, 50, 55 minutes, Patrick and I are going to cover the 6 biggest tech stories of the week. Little news, lots of analysis. That's what we do. We break it down for you here on the 6-5, and we appreciate all of you that tune in with us. Now, as a reminder, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And so while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, we just want to remind you, please don't take anything we say as investment advice. Patrick likes to say, do the opposite. I just say, don't take any of it. Don't do anything with it. Just enjoy it. Have a little fun. We are definitely 2 opinionated analysts, and we always have a view on everything that's going on. And today, we're going to have views on a few different topics. We're going to talk about what we saw up at Microsoft. We're going to then talk about how Google reacted to it. And then another company, IBM, that kind of stealthily came out with some news that maybe plays a role in this whole space. And then we're going to talk about a big launch from a apps company, Zoho, that we've talked about on this show a few times. A company everybody should be watching. We had some big chips news, and as a couple of chip-loving guys, we're going to talk about GlobalFoundries' big announcement with GM this week, and then we're going to end with what Pat and I like to call kind of a we topic, something we just want to talk about, and that's going to be about Elon Musk. And did he break Twitter? Was he moving too fast? Were you affected by it? I don't know. So, Pat, I don't know if we can preamble this thing any more than I already have. I've made this lengthy and long, and I hope everyone out there is having fun, settled in, and grab their popcorn and joining up for the show. But let's get down to business. I'm calling your number. It's going to be it's going to be a halfback dive between the tackles on Microsoft. What happened this week?
So first off, incredible event, stealthy, not stealthy. I think we got the go-ahead to even acknowledge we were going to Seattle when we were on a plane headed there. And what a beautiful view. If you'd like to see our pictures, just hit our Twitter. But most importantly, this was the big announcement for what I would call the consumer elements of leveraging generative AI and Chat GPT. And we learned a bunch of things. So first of all, the positioning of this, which I think is key, is a co-pilot for the new Bing search and the Microsoft Edge browser sidebar. And what that does is I think that's setting the stage. It says AI is not in charge, it's helping you. And I think, Dan, you've written books on this. I have not. But then again,
you were busy. You didn't have time to write a book.
Then again, do people really write their own books? I mean, does anybody write their own books?
Oh, now we're going to do that. Now I'm going to have to.
No. I mean, listen, nobody writes anything. But anyways, I think Copilot.
I use ChatGPT.
There we go.
I said, write a book in my voice about digital transformation.
No, I think that's cool. I prefer analog transformation. So let's just get that out there. Anyways, come on, Daniel, let's get serious here. So this is not just slapping a logo on OpenAI. Essentially, hey, I'm hearing a voices behind you. I don't know if you have TV on or is that something? No?
Squeaky chair.
Oh,
keep going, buddy. Keep going. I'll try to not squeak. Just stay focused. Yeah. Stay with me, buddy.
So first off, this is not just slapping a logo on OpenAI and ChatGPT. Microsoft has what's called the Prometheus model, which enables it to not make up stuff. And as I think what we've seen from OpenAI and all that good stuff, has a tendency to ghost and drift. There's also the Microsoft version of responsible AI that's in there that is unique. On Bing, there's also a brand new core search index, which isn't necessarily 100% related to Prometheus or the new AI capabilities. But what it does pull up a prompt when it does feel like it is a good moment, good Prometheus moment. We saw a lot of examples of planning trips. We saw creativity examples where you're going right into the search bar. We saw some cool Bing travel search. I thought the most powerful example was using the Bing sidebar where it had a PDF of, I think it was GAAP earnings, and essentially says summarize it, and it summarized it. I tried it on my own and a couple other ones. It's not perfect, but the ability to summarize documents, and you can imagine this ability put into Teams, which I think there is actually a new version of Teams that enables transcription and netting out exactly what happened. Sam Altman, co-founder and CEO of OpenAI, showed up for a hot minute. I think he flew in. Never actually heard him talk. He reminds me a lot of Elon Musk. Short and sweet, very intelligent, and to the point. The company did a lot of drill downs on responsible AI and how it has been architected from the grounds up architecturally. They showed a 3-layer cake using models, safety systems, and applications of how they do that. And you can just imagine the types of things all the way from politics to race, and nefarious instructions of how to hack stuff. You can imagine what those layers of intelligence need to put out there. Net, the company got an absolute, they scored points, right? Anytime Bing, when you're the 7% market share player and you can get mentioned as taking out the top search engine that's been out there for over 20 years, Google, you've scored the points. Now, is that a 3-minute, 3-hour, 3-day, 3-week, 3-month, 3-year advantage? I have no idea, but we're going to explore a little bit of that when we talked about what Google announced the day after. Today, there is a testable new edge with the Bing sidebar and the new Bing. So that was available to a limited audience, which, as we will talk about when we hit Google, is a very different approach. And quite frankly, Microsoft is first to market with this to the public.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of things on the head there, Pat. First of all, it was really interesting to go up there not knowing exactly what was coming. Was it Chat GPT 4? Well, not exactly, but it is more than Chat GPT 3. And let's be candid. This was like one of the best, worst kept secrets ever. Microsoft had already made the big investment, had already announced its intent to start incorporating generative AI into more and more of its portfolio. And that's where it's heading. Yeah. And this was the first iteration. Why search? Maybe is a good question to stop and ask here. Why search and not something else?
Well, Dan, you had a really good tweet out there during the financial.
I did. I was proud of that, and apparently, it made a few ripples and waves. But I mean, I was really just, in fairness, it wasn't really great analysis. I was just rehashing something that got shared, and real simple math. Bing has around 7% of the search market, or less, 7% or less of the search market. And, Google has the rest. And so I'm not going to talk about Google now because we're going to come back to Google. But what I'll say is they did an economic estimate of the value of Microsoft taking 1% of search. And right now, based upon the current market size, every 1% of search is $2 billion of annual revenue. So in a market where, there's, first of all, we're in a challenging macro. So if you're Satya Nadella and you're saying, how do I grow during this tough macro? Well, where can you take market, right? That's the first place you should probably think about investing, is where can you take market? Well, every 1%. So if Microsoft can make a Bing in the market, or a ding in the market. By the way, check my Forbes article, best title ever.
I don't know. Ours was pretty good too. So
sorry, dude. I usually give you props. This one's
all your own number.
This one's going to me. But in all seriousness, make it 10% is $20 billion of annual revenue. Let's talk about the technology itself. Is great. We had the chance to beta it. It's not yet great in everything. There's still a lot of learning and training to do. When I asked it the question of who's a better analyst, Dan Newman or Patrick Moorhead, I didn't think the answer was as good as it could have been. Kind of a joke. But it does seem that certain parts of the model have been more refined, and probably because of the way it's been tested, the way it's been utilized. And then, of course, based upon all the publicly available data on the market. And a lot of the power that's going to come long-term behind ChatGPT and behind a new Bing and a new Edge is going to be as companies are expanding to having more, what I would say, unique data. And that's where it's going to start to be in the apps, meaning in the app ecosystem, in Teams. When it starts to get behind the company's firewall and into the company's own data sets, where it can tap the public data and tap the ERP data, tap the human resources data, tap the BI data, and start to incorporate that with, that's when it starts to get really smart and really interesting, especially for companies that have treasure troves of unique data about their customers or competition or markets, et cetera. So a very interesting pathway. That's what I see here, Pat. The pathway isn't just about Bing and Edge. It was very logical, first place to take market, and obviously a place where the company has long been seen as a distant second to the current front runner. I guess I'll kind of wrap up there with, the overall impression that I have is that this is going to take some time. And despite the fact that we used it, we liked it, it looks good, it's exciting, and it's definitely a watershed moment, I think we can perfectly segue into Google by saying this isn't going to be an overnight shift of massive amounts of market share. But what I can say is they've changed the game, and the players all have to come back on the field. Shall we run over to Google? I guess I can.
Let's hit Google. Dan, keep going. You're on a roll, man.
Let's talk about Google. I want to talk about it through the lens of competition before I actually talk about what they announced. A lot of the press that we talked to, Pat, and you talked to a lot of press, I talked to a lot of press about this announcement, was kind of like, is this going to, is Google, screwed here? Is this, game over for Google? So we all know Google's gotten into cloud, and we know Google has some big bets, but Google's revenue largely comes from search. It's search on Google, it's search on YouTube, it's advertising. And make no mistake about it, the advertising model of yesterday is going to be disrupted significantly. And I'll make it really easy. When you try the new Bing, there's going to be a left side and a right side, okay? The left side is basically going to look like the search of yesteryear. Now for Bing, this was a big watershed moment because Bing search on the left side, I don't know about you, Pat. I know we got to be, we want to be diplomatic here, but it was like, I use Edge browser, but I go to Google for search. I just don't find the Bing searches to historically have been very good. Now with these new model, it's already better. So I already noticed straight away the searches are closer in quality to Google. That's a big thing because what's that?
Interesting.
Yeah. So again, this is my early readout. I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but my early readout is the traditional search has improved from where it was. But the right side of the screen is the generative AI. The right side of the screen is where it'll prompt, it'll fill things in, or you scroll up and you get to the natural language processing where you actually add the chat function to actually query that way by searching using questions and then prompting additional questions and seeing multi-turn conversational AI where you're getting more data and more insights. And that's really interesting. And that's going to change everything. And this is what Google really has to answer to is the history was display ads. The history was you search something, you'd find results, and they could populate ads around it so that you could target some sort of commercial activity, whether that's buying a product or clicking on a link that somebody has set up to get set up to pay per click to a website. The generative AI sort of does a lot of abstracting and summation. So, I asked the question, help me set up a vacation, a 5-day vacation for Mexico, and I want to basically, they showed this kind of example and give me an itinerary. Well, this thing literally draws out a 5-day itinerary. And then, the example was, well, then help me write a letter that I could share with my family that kind of explains the trip to everybody.
Yeah.
So in that whole generative process, it ends up creating kind of a flow of content that historically you would have had to click through. You would have clicked through to a Travel Zoo website. You would have clicked through to an Expedia website. You would have clicked through, and you would have had to kind of aggregate all this. Well, it's done this for you. So it begs a question about the business model. So, because right now Google gets paid by all those companies every time you ended up clicking on one of those sites. What's Microsoft's plan? Meaning that, they say, well, we still think people are going to click. I'm saying, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure people are going to click, and I'm certain they're going to click less. So this is what Google is kind of up against too, is if people can go to Bing and you can get a letter written, you can get an itinerary planned, you can get it all generated in AI in a single readable window that doesn't require clicking down. How do you replace the economic value? And so even in Microsoft's $2 billion per percent question, this needs to be answered, because if people aren't clicking on the display ads, where does the money come from? I do think there's going to be an interesting opportunity from a model standpoint, Pat, for people to put to basically pay to be prioritized in the model, meaning it's going to be different where you generatively come up by priority. Because Pat, if there's 10,000 travel articles, how does ChatGPT decide which ones get prioritized? Really interesting question. Can you build training to train to prioritize certain models based upon pay? I think so. I think that's possible. So long story short, I'll get here on Bard. I'll make a minute and I'm going to hand that over to you to talk more about, Pat. But Bard is going to do similar things. Google didn't really tell us much about what it is. They basically said, this is in dispute. And we have something coming and it's going to be very exciting. My guess personally was they had no intention of rolling it out this soon. They were forced to move everything forward. I also want to say, though, as an advocate of Google, is I don't see the business changing as much as people think. I do see Microsoft picking up a couple points of market share near term because there will be a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about this. But if Google can land quickly, they have a couple of massive advantages. One is search on mobile. Every Android device defaults to Google. And honestly, right now, I think Apple too. It defaults to Google, even when you search in Safari. So right now, the fact that the whole mobile ecosystem leads with Google is still going to be a massive hurdle for Microsoft. So there's a lot more I want to say about, but I've talked a lot straight in a row. So I want to hand it back to you and let you kind of cover the rest of this one.
Listen, needs a lot more effort than 5 to 10 minutes. I am glad you brought up the cost piece, because even for Microsoft, the cost per transaction is troubling. It's only troubling because there wasn't a thesis provided. I did appreciate on Microsoft's analyst call that they did kind of get into what I thought was a profit dollar, which is, listen, we're not part of this market share right now. It's all accretive, so don't even worry about how much this costs if we can make a ton of money on it. I completely understand that. But so Google's stock, I think, declined in total, 10-15% in 2 days, lost over $100 billion in value. And I understand why. I got up at 7:30, I guess 5:30 Pacific, to watch Google's AI event. And essentially the key message is they talked about Google supremacy in AI today, right, across photo, translate, lens. And I think it has a really good point. I mean, these are all products that I use: less lens, more photos, and translate, and some of the interesting stuff that they infuse into Gmail. But they do have the consumer lead today, no doubt. And on the commercial side, on the cloud side, they use AI very effectively as a land and expand tool. The other key message was, hey, these LLMs, large language models, are not new to us. Essentially, we rewrote the book on it in 2017, right? Which they went out of their way. But then they went into Bard, but it's super light, right? And I think, what got everybody excited was that the answer was wrong. I think it could be debatable if it was wrong. But by the way, all the searches I've done on the new AI infused Bing, they're not always right. But when you're doing a demo, you darn better get it right. The examples that Microsoft used on stage, I videoed many of them, and so did you. They were perfect. The video cut off early. You can see on my Twitter feed, the video went private for me before the entire event was over. That does not imbue confidence. One of the biggest things one of the bigger mistakes I think Google made was they said, right, this is literally, 12 hours after Microsoft opens up these new features to millions of people. Google says that Bard is now with trusted testers. And listen, sometimes I've been accused of saying that the world revolves around me, Pat, or you think the world revolves around me. But essentially, Dan, have you received your invite as a trusted tester for Bard? Dan?
Yeah, I'm answering to the no.
Yeah. So
unless I missed an email.
Yeah. So I haven't either, and therefore you and I are not trusted. And I think that is an absolute mistake, and they should have thought through how they use those words. What I think they were trying to communicate is that generative AI is scary. Okay, and we can't just unleash it onto the world. But they didn't stick that one at all, and their stock was down, and they got clobbered. Now, I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth, or what might seem like that, and say this is a very long game. You do not replace somebody who's number one overnight. Even when we saw the fascination of what were brand new social media sites like Twitter and Instagram, it didn't just make Facebook go away, right? So it's going to be, the ball, though, is certainly in Google's court by judging in what happened to the stock price, which I think a lot was fueled by what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said in interviews, essentially saying, the profit margin of the advertising industry is going to get a radical reconstruction. Those weren't his exact words. Those were my takeaways. I totally get what's going to happen. So if I'm Google moving forward, I would go out and get a lot of feedback, not pretend like sometimes I think Google sometimes appears to me that, hey, we don't need to talk to anybody or ask anybody's input because we're the smartest people in the room. I think that's a mistake right now. And I think they should be asking, if they're not already, their trusted stakeholders, smart people on what they think their next steps should be.
Yeah, there's a lot more, Pat. This saga is not over yet, and I think we're going to need to make some time to talk about this more in depth. Maybe we can get some folks from Google and Microsoft onto the pod. We'll have to see if we can arrange that in the near future, because I think it'd be good to have this debate and keep this debate alive. Pat, on a much less directly competitive note, but on a yet relevant competitive note, IBM made some announcements that were like, hey, are they putting their, they tossing their hat in the ring here? What's going on?
Yeah, it is interesting, Dan. Microsoft had its event. I totally understood the context of Google's event. And then this week, IBM unveils that they have had an AI supercomputer called Vela that has been out there using x86 processors, NVIDIA GPUs, Ethernet, so AKA industry standard, to train what it calls foundational AI models. And then you're like, I don't think I've ever heard the term foundational AI models, maybe the AI experts out there. But what happened is essentially foundational models. One example is GPT-3, is called by some foundational AI models. I wish that IBM would have just used terms that I think people were familiar with, because I don't think they fully got their pound of flesh out of there. But the cool part is this supercomputer has been online since May of 2022, right? So in other words, this may have been a PR reaction, or not a reaction, maybe an intelligent way to take advantage of the flow, but this has been online for a long time. I, for one, am super interested to see what IBM can do with this, because quite frankly, it's one thing to learn how to have a kid's recipe or where I should go on a trip, right? Like we saw with both Bard and the new Bing. It's a whole other thing to figure out how you get business value out of this new phase of AI. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, IBM has been on a really good trajectory. The company has stabilized during what was a tough macro year. That's because their business really is focused now, serving the enterprise. Really, two things are in focus every day for IBM and Arvind Krishna, and that's hybrid cloud and AI. That's the focus. That's what the company's been leaning into. And that's what I expect the company to continue to lean into in the future. To me, this was a little bit of newsjacking in the sense of, hey, let's go ahead and put some PR out there this week amidst a lot of interest in what big tech companies are doing around AI. But there's also some real meat here. And the first is the transparency to explain, because the transparency right now is one of the things that people are really looking for, whether that's Microsoft talking about responsible AI or IBM just explaining its infrastructure decisions of how it's building this supercomputer and why this is going to eventually matter. Having this infrastructure built out correctly is going to be really important long-term for not just R&D, but for the ability to deliver value. IBM makes its money by delivering customer value. It does it for the enterprise, and enterprises are saying, hey, how do we get more from our data? So in order to get more from your data, you are going to need models like what IBM is building on hardware like IBM is building to be able to deliver it at scale. So the company is kind of saying, hey, we want to make sure the world knows that we're doing interesting things too. And yes, on the consumer and everyday use case, something like OpenAI and something like Bard are going to change the way we search and change the way we browse the internet. But for IBM, they're saying, hey, when you're using your business intelligence tools, when you're running your supply chain management offerings, when you're trying to optimize ERP, we're building tools that you can use, advanced AI capabilities on our AIU, on our hardware and infrastructure, and we're going to be able to help you optimize it. So IBM really is more of a partner to all this, in my opinion. They're going to align on the back. Pat, what do you say about connecting the back to the front and then adding really important AI tools? That's the story they're trying to tell. I believe that the company is doing some really progressive things. That's why their revenues have been screaming in the right direction. They're software focused, they're AI focused, they're hybrid infrastructure focused, and that's how the enterprise is architecting itself to be able to take advantage of large language models, take advantage of the next generation of AI. So IBM is doing some things. It kind of aligns in the moment. I don't think it was totally directly competitive, but I do see overlapping features, and this type of AI and the application of it in the enterprise will be material.
Yeah, in fact, I saw closer to Azure's announcement of ChatGPT and OpenAI capabilities on Azure cloud than anything else.
So let's talk about Zoho a little bit. Zoho launched Trident this week. It's a new app that's kind of designed to be a central communications organizational hub. It's trying to centralize access to email, messaging, phone, video, and also, optimizing task management, calendaring. It's becoming a bit of a trend in the industry to see these apps companies consolidate. I think in many ways, Zoho and Trident is the company's answer to a little bit of what Teams is doing, a little bit of what Salesforce and Slack is doing. And it's the opportunity to kind of really execute across its Zoho One strategy to say, we're going to give you an all-in-one set of tools that can enable a company to handle your UC, your project management, your marketing, kind of pulling it all together and scaling the business. Interestingly, Trident, kind of sits on top of the workplace, which has been a really big growth engine for Zoho. I think they were growing. I think they're saying something around 30% right now, Pat, 16 million users. And again, really designed to be kind of a central work hub. Zoho is going up market. And so, as you and I know, when we first started advising and working alongside Zoho, they were really focused on kind of an SM market. And now what we're seeing is kind of the SM and ME and moving more and more into handling middle-sized and larger enterprises. The company really is trying to say, hey, we can be the one-stop set of solutions, whether that's you need a Slack-like solution, whether you need a project-like solution, whether you need a Meet-like solution. And, they're really pushing that along. They're offering a bunch of new and advanced productivity tools. They've got Zoho Webinar now. They've got their voice platform now. They got Click, which is their answer to, what you'd call Teams or Slack. You've got, we've been using Meeting for a while, Pat. But, to me, it's the continued evolution of what I would say a really reasonably priced full suite of solutions for enterprises that are looking to really centralize everything from finance to ERP to collaboration to applications. And by the way, Pat, pricing is probably worth noting. I mean, their most expensive professional plan on this whole workplace is $6 a user. And that gives the entire suite of products with 100 gigs of mail and similar drive space. And you can go down to, as little as $1 a month if you're looking at the mail only tier. It's in public beta right now, Pat. It's a pretty, so it's something that people can start to use. But, my kind of take on the whole thing is it's a consolidation play. It's a centralization play for companies that are looking for, a single solution, reasonably priced to really bring together all of its kind of comms, collab, meeting, as well as the ability to connect easily to CRM, project, and ERP. Zoho is a really interesting play. If you're looking in that particular mix, and I think what they've built with Zoho Workplace is an interesting competition, especially to that smaller enterprise company that's looking for either an alternative to a Salesforce or Teams type of integration at scale. And so good announcement. Zoho continues to plot along, great growth. And that's because I think it's really reasonable and a very complete solution.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dan. I agree with many of the things that you said. I will characterize something different though, in that Zoho was at the lead in terms of unified suite. They were there before Microsoft. They were there before Google. They were definitely there before Salesforce, who was just starting to create a full stack. So technically, I would say that everybody's following Zoho. Now, in terms of market share and notoriety, absolutely not. And the funny thing about Trident, and you can hit both our articles on Forbes, is that you can imagine how easy this was for Zoho, right? Because they have a full stack not only of the software but also in their core infrastructure. And essentially, what they did is they integrated. And again, people always think that software is easy, but I guess what I'm saying is that they integrated products that were based on the same core architecture, on the same core infrastructure. So their ability to do this is a heck of a lot easier than, let's say, a Salesforce that might have 4 or 5 different kinds of code that it has to integrate. And even Oracle went through about 6 or 7 years of integration, and then they put the Redwood UI on top, kind of as a nice cherry on top. But these things take time. So I think then it gets into the integrations that they did for Trident, and I think they make sense, right? Communication, right? Chat, video, email in one place, if you want it, I think is the one that I could see being used probably most of all. And then the other part I think that is nice is that you don't have to use every single one of Zoho's modules. They do have integration of Zoom, Slack, Dropbox, Box, even Google Workspace. So it's kind of like you have your cake and eat it too. If you don't like one of the modules that come in Trident and you want to use something else on Workplace, you can use what you might consider best of breed. I do think it's a super interesting time for the company also, and I had a great conversation with their CEO. Did a video with him a couple weeks back, and talking about how SaaS multiples have gone down so much, and Zoho is a bootstrapped company, and therefore their ability to invest hasn't changed at all. And with the economic downturn, people are looking for packages that are fully integrated. That let's say, again, I'm not denigrating anything in Zoho, but let's say it brings 90% of the features to the table for half the price. That is a really freaking good value proposition, and everybody's looking at consolidation plays during this time, including Microsoft, Google. I haven't seen anything from Salesforce yet, but again, congratulations to Zoho on the announcement.
Yeah, it was a good one, Pat. And it was a good point about two things. Calling it out early, that they've been in the lead in terms of building a unified workspace. I think these advancements are taking it to a much more user-friendly. And the other thing that you called out, I think that's really worth double-clicking on, is that people can continue to use preferred apps while integrating here, meaning you don't have to give up Zoom or other tools that you actually enjoy in order to get the benefit of that unified workspace. So let's talk about chips. I like to talk about chips. Let's snack a little bit. So GlobalFoundries made a big announcement with GM. It kind of hits on like 4 or 5 different things, Pat. I'm going to let you go first, but a bunch of angles here.
Yeah, so GF has really been on the move for the past couple of years, and quite frankly, they didn't get the credit they deserved until we saw the chip downturn, right? People's brains seem to be fixated on, kind of bleeding edge digital with the latest processors and GPUs. But what we learned with the pandemic and the supply chain challenges is, you can't ship that $50,000 car without that $2 analog part to, either help drive the RF of that 5G or 4G modem, or power conditioning. power conditioning is an analog function, and every electric car out there literally has thousands of these power conditioners to be able to have the most effective performance. I'll call it performance per watt, mile per watt outcome. And those are just a few of the things that GF brings to the table. They're also industry leader in silicon photonics compared to companies like TSMC. And then finally, you have the China challenge, or the balkanization of the semiconductor market, where GF clearly plays actually on all continents. So they're almost a safe bet even for the Chinese. So what's new? As we saw, we had cars that couldn't be shipped because people couldn't get a 50-cent semiconductor. You had car companies that were shipping units without radios, right? Odd little weird types of things. And what we've seen, we've seen GF sign up a couple automakers now, but General Motors signed up a long-term direct supply chain agreement for the U.S. produced chips for them. And again, not to say we've seen this before, but no, we've seen this before, and it's just smart. And I think it's a testament to GlobalFoundries that they didn't pick either Tower or TSMC.
Yeah, so I think there's some really interesting things that this also insinuates, right? The timing of this announcement with CHIPS Act money at stake has to be considered right now. I've written a few pieces, as have you, Pat. I wrote a Market Watch piece kind of saying, where's the CHIPS Act money going to go? And I believe it's going to disproportionately go to Intel. Intel's stepped up, raised its hand, and they're building these massive Columbus superfab. They're going to kind of win on we're going to be the leading edge. But let's be candid. You said this really well. A lot of the delays, a lot of the problems, and by the way, one of the parts of the market that has not caught up even still has been the automotive space, meaning where we have a glut of chips to build PCs and smartphones and data center servers. We're still catching up from what's gone on in the automotive space. Inventory supplies are still down. The second thing, Pat, was the streamlining of parts, where they're going to basically work with GM so that a single part bin can handle more of the needs. So, different sensors or different controllers, can be basically multifaceted and used for different purposes in a vehicle. So instead of having to have 100, say you have 100 semis in a vehicle and having 17 different parts to do it, now they have 100 semis and maybe they'll have 5 parts. And so if they can manufacture more volume, they would be able to deliver more successfully for the customers. The third is this is being done in upstate New York. And Pat, that's why I really point out the CHIPS Act thing was the commitment is to do the manufacturing in upstate New York, which means it's good for the U.S. So with GlobalFoundries kind of always being one of these companies that's like, are they U.S. based or are they not U.S. based, right? They were backed by a sovereign fund in the Middle East, and there's always a little bit of question as to, where do they stand? They are a U.S. listed company with a U.S. based CEO that runs the company here in the U.S., and they are bringing more manufacturing and more jobs to the U.S. So I think this could be a real plus for their sort of positioning to get additional funds in the CHIPS Act as well. I mean, what's more apple pie than GM in terms of like a U.S. based company that's making a bigger commitment to using this U.S. manufacturing to try to, sway the policymakers. So was that intentional? I can't speak to that. But what I can say is very good timing, given where we're at with appropriations. And of course, a very good strategic move to streamline the parts, streamline the manufacturing, and bring more of it home. U.S. has always been better on the lagging than the leading. So our problems longer term to solve leading edge manufacturing are still a real challenge. But GlobalFoundries fills a really important need with these, Pat, what'd you call them, 50-cent part bin, that are the difference between cars being manufactured and cars not being manufactured. So good partnership, good announcement for GlobalFoundries. And by the way, GM is a winner here too. Let's go on to our final topic, because we're at that 5-minute warning before we've got to sprint off and do the thing we do after we do this thing. By the way, my favorite part of the day. Pat, Elon Musk broke Twitter. The press loved it. They wrote all about it. For what is about an hour and a half. People were some customers were struggling to tweet and send DMs, and basically the question came: is he moving too fast? Is he breaking stuff? And so I guess I'll give a little quick commentary, and then I'd rather do a little bit of back and forth. I think Elon is doing a good job of advancing. He's cut the. You are frozen. Look at that.
Can you hear me?
I do hear you. I just don't see you. So if you want to go ahead and maybe refresh your browser, see if you can come back.
Yeah, it's funny. My Edge is.
There you are. You're back. You're back. Look at that. So Elon Musk basically, I'm gonna throw the right banner on there. Oh, you got it. Elon Musk basically, has moved and advanced and improved and gotten I think a lot of foundational movement in terms of the infrastructure of Twitter. And he's done it with 70% less staff. So going down for an hour, I mean, some of the technical questions, I don't think we got a certain answer to what it was, but people are back, people are moving again. And by the way, Twitter has had plenty of downtime in its history. So while everybody wants to lob a grenade and blame this on Elon, I've had more than a few fail whales in my life. So Pat, did he break Twitter? I mean, or, is this a free app or mostly free app that consumers use and a little downtime?
Yeah. So here's what I noticed. I follow a lot of the press in my Twitter feeds, and a lot of press, particularly the ones that, that say that they're also on Mastodon and really tried to get people off and said they were quitting, came back on Twitter, as you and I predicted, and they came out of the woodwork. I saw some person had 10 tweets about the challenge that I think lasted maybe an hour and a half. What happened recently was people got a rate limit error out there, and so they could schedule tweets, but they wouldn't automatically come out. And that is absolutely a fail. But the amount of press that I saw come out and the amount of articles, they were literally, my impression was they were just so happy that something finally happened. Now, forget the fact that it's been months since Elon literally went from 7,000 people to 1,000 people and 500 engineers. Okay, think about this for a second. And didn't skip a beat. They did add features. There were some momentary issues with Blue, but you can tell who is egging on and who is trying to, who is definitely looking for a reason to shit talk Elon Musk. And I actually think it's incredibly amazing that he got rid of 6,000 people, got down to 500 engineers, and that we even have Twitter, right? And I'll end with, you and I predicted at the end of 2022 that these were momentary issues. Advertisers would come back and users would come back. I don't know exact users. I think that the recent meme in the last 2 days is, Elon is firing somebody because he doesn't get enough interaction on his posts, yet another way to just denigrate. And overall, I think it's more of a personal thing about Elon. They don't like his personality and what he does, and might even question his political leanings. But here we are. I think you and I have been proven right so far. It's only February 10th on what's going on with Twitter. But, so far we look pretty good. And I'll key off what you said, I think, on a call yesterday, which is, hey, as analysts, we only talk about the predictions that we got right. And I think so far you and I got this right.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Pat. I think it's working well. I talked to the Wall Street Journal about it this week. And, I think there's a lot to be desired for building a feature set that people will pay for yet. The subscription part, I think, lags a little bit in terms of what people would pay the $8. An edit button's kind of cool, but I'm not sure what that's worth to everybody. But I do think the stuff works. It's robust. There's been very little disruption. And by the way, all the hype about all the advertisers leaving, that kind of came and went. I'm not saying people are and aren't. We don't know it's a private company and they really no longer need to disclose that. But I do think that it just seemed like it was a temporary, it was a weather pattern. It stormed over and now it's moved on. Most people don't even know. They don't pay attention. And by the way, Pat, I've kind of turned off some of all, I just don't do as much doom scrolling and rage scrolling as I used to do. And to me, Twitter just feels like Twitter. So I don't know. It doesn't really feel any different to me now than it felt to me a year ago. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I always loved Twitter and I still love Twitter. So for what it's worth, I think Elon will probably end up doing just fine. I don't think he's really ever had a business that didn't do just fine. And usually it's some orders of magnitude better than that. So, hey, buddy, that was a good show. We did it. We did it. Let's get on to our day. I'm back to back until 6. Yeah. And I'm sure you are as well. I am going to be twiddling my thumbs because that's what I do all day. I do one pod a week and then I twiddle my thumbs. But no, in all seriousness, busy day ahead. It's probably a time for both of us to start a call. So everyone out there, hit that subscribe button. We love having you as part of the 6-5 community. We love all of our followers, all of our friends, all the people that watch the show. Of course, all of our partners. 6-5 Summit coming up in June. If you haven't signed up, we hope you will soon as we make that available. And all of you are out there. So many more shows, so much more to come. We will be off to Mobile World Congress in Spain, where we will be doing a bunch of content end of the month. But that's a few weeks away, so we can talk more about that later. For Patrick, for myself, got to go. Adios. See you later. Bye-bye.